What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs Live podcast. I am your host, Kyle Malzahn, alongside co-host Mark Tellerico. And hey, look, another week into the offseason, which means another week closer to Cubs baseball being back. So on this episode, we're going to take a look at the offseason for the Cubs and see who makes sense and who doesn't make sense to bring back. So you ready, Mark? Let's get right into it.
Sounds good.
All right, so I'm just going to list names, a shortly, brief explanation about these, Cubs free agents. Tell me if you want them back, if you don't, and why, just a little bit. So starting it off, Jorge De La Rosa, a guy who had a 4.58 ERA for his career. He comes to the Cubs, posted a 1.29 ERA. He wasn't a bad player, to turn on in the bullpen late in the season. What do you feel about that?
I mean, he is Jorge De La Rosa. He is 37 years old, but he did have a 1.29 ERA with the Cubs, and that's over 21 innings. So that's a pretty decent sample size for someone that came over halfway through the year. And even though he's 37 and his career numbers, 4.58 ERA, he had a 1.048 whip with the Cubs, which is really good for a reliever, and that's the kind of thing that you're looking for. And I don't think you could have too many arms, so I don't see why not. He's 37. Offer him another year or two. Just, say, hey, you're kind of old. I don't want to put all my money into this, but why not have him come over? He did great for us.
Absolutely. 1-year deal, not too expensive, not a bad option. Option number 2, Jesse Chavez, possibly the savior of the Cubs bullpen when you look into terms of injuries that happen, and a player that stepped up big time was Jesse. He's going to be 34 years old this year, so obviously, like we said with Jorge De La Rosa, he's getting up there a little bit, but not quite there. He posted a 1.15 ERA with the Cubs over 39 innings. Like I said, he was almost the anchor for that Cubs bullpen. I say absolutely 100%.
I mean, I think it's we'll get into this in a second, but I think it's as much of a no-brainer as Cole Hamels, in my opinion. I think that Jesse Chavez, he was absolutely the anchor, and they gave up I think Tyler Thomas for him, who is actually the name of one of my best friends. So if you're listening to this, what's up, Tyler? But we got him for basically nothing, and he did so well, and he's gone on record saying that he's either going to be a Cub or he's like done playing. So I respect the hell out of that. I think that he definitely needs to be a Cub. I say sign him for anywhere 2 to 3 years, something like that. It doesn't need to be just 1 year. He was so good with the Cubs. I say keep him here.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, after that wild card game, when he was in the locker room, he said, I hope to play next year in a Cubs uniform. Otherwise, I don't want to play baseball. And that speaks volume to the kind of culture they have in Chicago. All right, so yeah, we're both in on Jesse Chavez. Obviously, now Justin Wilson. This one can get a little controversial because a guy who was traded over in 2017 from the Tigers and the Cubs, they were expecting a different player than what he turned out to be, I think. Obviously, we know in 2017, he walked just about every batter in the box, but in 2018, he was quietly solid, and I don't think he got a lot of credit for it. But I wouldn't be too mad if the Cubs threw a 1-year deal at him, but I can 100% see why they don't. And like you said before, you can never have enough arms in the bullpen. And just like 2018 for the Cubs, it showed you can't because there's injuries that happen. Big-time players sometimes, they go down and you need someone to pick it up, and that's where Jesse Chavez stepped up big time. So Justin Wilson, obviously, I wouldn't be too upset if they, gave him a 1-2 year deal, but I can 100% see why they don't. Where do you stand on it?
Yeah, I mean, he did have a better year, 3.46 ERA, but his walks are still a concern, and his 1.427 whip is still really high. It's down from his 2017, which was just absolutely terrible, but it's still higher than his career average of 1.268. So he's still not really the pitcher that the Cubs wanted him to be. He is definitely better, and he had his moments, but he's very streaky. There were times that even if he's been doing great, he's one of the least confident. I have no confidence in him, really. I don't have any confidence in him in a late game situation. Even though I feel like I should, I don't. I think that what the Cubs should do and what they will do, they'll let him hit the market, and if he's still there for a couple weeks, a month or so, see what the market value is, and then maybe bring him in on a cheaper deal. Let him test it out, but I don't think they're going to commit anything major. I say at most probably 2 years.
Absolutely. Okay, so Cole Hamels. This one's kind of a no-brainer because he was such a great pickup for the Cubs. Now, going into 2019, he has that $20 million team option for the Cubs, came over to Chicago, and the rest is history, right? I mean, he was so dominant like he was 27 again, pitching for the Phillies. I mean, this guy was huge for the Cubs. And it also gives you that veteran, type leader in the Cubs rotation, just like a John Lester. And if we remember the wild card game, Cole Hamels pitched great, obviously, came in later in the game. So for you, where do you stand on it?
The only question is whether you just extend him for the 1 year and accept this offer, or if you reconstruct the deal and extend him for 3 or 4 years or something like that, because I think Bleacher Nation, Brett Taylor, I think I've seen him talk about that before, and I think it's a good question. I don't think there's any doubt that he will at least be here if we're 2019. It's just whether they want to continue and have him for the next couple of years, which I don't think that's the end of the world if they do. I think that would be a good decision. There's no way they let him walk. There's no way.
Absolutely. And I think that's the smart thing to do, kind of reconstruct that contract, get him on the Cubs for a few years, because there's so many options in this Cubs rotation, right, that you can have. And, like you see, you have Yu Darvish, you got Cole Hamels now possibly, you got John Lester, you got Hendricks, Quintana. You also have Smiley. I mean, you have Montgomery. I mean, just so many people. So, all right, so obviously we're both in on Cole Hamels, and I think a contract might get constructed. I don't know. We'll see what Theo does. He has quite an interesting offseason on his hands, obviously, in more than recent years. So Daniel Murphy, we all know about the homophobic comments on the field or off the field, and we all know that the guy is a negative defender. I've never seen someone turn double plays that ugly before, but great hitter though, right? I mean, it seemed like everyone on the Cubs learned from Murphy because he was so intelligent on the offense. And obviously he went in that slump with the Cubs, but he's still Daniel Murphy. He's one heck of a hitter, and that's the intangibles that sometimes you can't measure with stats that a player brings to the Cubs. But I do not think the Cubs will offer him anything, and he will hit the free agent mark.
I think that, like you said, he wasn't a total dud with the Cubs. He had his moments for sure, and he is one of the best hitters of our generation, truly. He's an amazing hitter. He's just a natural-born hitter, and that's his only value, really, and that's why I think he's going to go to an American League team and just be a DH. He serves no purpose on the infield. He, like you said, some of his double plays were just disgusting. They were so bad. But maybe if Addison Russell, I think he's gone anyways, but I think if they can't sign someone, if they don't have all that much faith in Bodie or Happ, they might keep him on board as a John Jay kind of player, or it's a 1 year deal kind of thing. But it's going to be the same kind of deal as Justin Wilson, I think, where they're going to let him test the market, and then if he's there for a while, maybe you offer him something, a little tender deal. But I don't see Daniel Murphy being in the Cubs.
And like you said, maybe test free agency, but in my opinion, that Daniel Murphy is going to get paid in the offseason. He's going to get money, and I don't know if the Cubs are going to commit that much money into a player that they don't necessarily need to fill a void, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, you're losing Addison Russell, Javier possibly losing Addison Russell, if not the first half of the season. You're going to move Javier Baez as a shortstop, and obviously there's a hole at second base. But look, the Cubs still have Ben Zobrist. They still got Addison Russell. And who knows? I mean, David Bodie could slide over there. So there's options with it. And I don't think the Cubs really necessarily need Daniel Murphy to spend that much money on a player. Now, Brandon Kinsler, a guy the Cubs got midway through the year last season, and he was kind of comparable to Justin Wilson in 2017. Walks a lot of guys, gave up homers. You got to let him go.
It's a complicated option. It's a complicated thing because he, for his career, even with this terrible Cubs half of the season that he had there, he has a 3.48 ERA. He is a season and a half removed, or 2 seasons, I guess you could say, from being an all-star. He was great the first half with Washington. I don't know if they knew there was an injury or something. I don't know what they knew when they dealt him away, because everybody was like, what is Washington doing getting rid of Kinsler? Well, maybe they knew what they were doing. I don't know if you can really trust him. I mean, you can't commit any money to him. I mean, he was dreadful with the Cubs. Don't give him any money. If you let him go, and if maybe he'll be like a Lackey kind of thing where he just doesn't get signed, and then instead of Lackey just kind of retiring, if he even has retired yet, but maybe a late deal. I really don't know. No, nothing big with him. He was so bad with the Cubs. His strikeout to walk ratio was absolutely terrible. A lot of home runs. There was nothing good to say about him, really.
Right. 100% agree. Now, obviously, we're going to end on a good note. Pedro Strop. one of the best, if not the best, Cubs reliever of all time. He has a $6.25 million team option. And this is a no-brainer, right? You bring him back. This is the Cubs anchor in the bullpen. He shows emotion. He's grounded. He's funny on social media. I can't imagine what he's like in that bullpen. So, I mean, he's just the Cubs' typical player. And like I just said before, I mentioned, he might be the best Cubs reliever of all time. So, obviously, you got to re-sign him.
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest no-brainer ever. It's just, okay, how long are they gonna re-sign him for? Because they're not gonna let him walk. They want Pedro Strop to be that guy, whether it is as the best setup guy, which he is the best Cubs setup pitcher of all time statistic-wise. It's just whether they want to commit that to him long-term, which I don't imagine why they wouldn't. So,
absolutely. So those are the free agents, the most key free agents that we're going to talk about. Obviously, the Cubs can go sign other free agents in the market. There's a lot to be sorted out yet. And we're sitting here not even in November yet, and we're still so hype about this offseason. Now, as we all know, for the first time in 3 years, the Cubs weren't guaranteed at the very least a 5-game series in this year's playoff. And now as the World Series is starting to, heat up between the Red Sox and Dodgers, Mark, I got to ask you this. What do these two teams have that the Cubs didn't have this year?
Well, it's more of that the Cubs had Chili Davis. Okay, I'm kidding. But really, I mean, they had the offensive explosiveness because if you look at the pitching wise, yeah, Boston has Chris Sale and David Price, and the Dodgers have Clayton Kershaw, so they have that top of the line ace kind of thing. But when it comes to playoffs and big games, I mean, there aren't much bigger than John Lester and Jose Quintana. I'm not Jose Quintana, John Lester and Kyle Hendricks. And then, they had their injuries too. The Dodgers, I think there was a time where they had like 20 guys in the DL. They've had so many injuries. They were just able to overcome the adversity that the Cubs were not able to. And it really comes down to the offense, in my opinion, because I think that the Cubs bullpen can match up with just about anybody. And the pitching wise, when they were healthy, they were carrying the team. I can't count how many games they lost 2-0, 2-1, 1-0. The pitching did their job. It was really just the offense.
You're absolutely right. And like you said, the offense didn't convert. They had 40 games this season, which was tied with the Orioles, that they scored, 2 or 1 run less, which is you're not going to win games by that. And obviously, it's kind of remarkable too, because the Dodgers in the beginning of the season, they were a mess, right? I mean, they lost Corey Seager. He was out. They didn't really have a true shortstop, but then they went and got Machado. Justin Turner comes back, and everything started clicking for them. Obviously, they're in a heated division race until about last few games of the season, and now they're playing in the World Series. So the offense converted big time for those two teams that the Cubs didn't have. And you're right, adversity 100%, and the Cubs didn't come through it. They didn't break through like the Dodgers did. And the Red Sox, they kind of cruised their way to the playoffs. It kind of reminded me of the 2016 team where they could rest some guys in first few weeks of September and give those guys rest. And now they are where they are, and they're too legit to quit, I think. And I think predictions, I say Red Sox in 5.
Yeah, I think that, well, first off, I don't know what the Dodgers are doing. Cody Bellinger isn't starting again in game 2. I'm a huge Cody Bellinger guy. I know you are too. I don't care lefty-lefty matchup, that kind of thing. You start an absolute stud. You start one, and that's Cody Bellinger. You need to start him. I don't know what the Dodgers are doing with that, but I think that the Dodgers, they're going to be in a couple games. They might win. They might squeak one out or so, but I think that the Red Sox are one of the most dominant teams that I've seen in my lifetime. I think that Red Sox in 5 or 6 if the Dodgers get lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's reel it into the Cubs now. After 2019, Joe Maddon's contract will end with the Cubs. No matter what happens after that, if they extend his contract, move on, whatever they do, there's really no question that he will forever be a Cubs legend. The guy changed the culture for the Cubs, brought winning baseball attitude to the city. But also keep in mind, Joe Maddon is the oldest manager in all of Major League Baseball right now. And that takes a toll because you never know if he's going to hang it up or not. Obviously, he probably still wants to be in Chicago, but there's so many variables to be set yet. So now there were reports this week that Joe Girardi is waiting to become a manager for a Chicago team. So, Mark, let me ask you this. What is more likely to happen? The Cubs to extend Joe Maddon's contract or Joe Girardi managing the Cubs in 2020?
I would personally say I think that Joe Maddon would get an extension before Joe Girardi. But I also I'm not even counting on the extension. I just think that Girardi and the Cubs, that doesn't make any sense because a lot of the issues that Girardi had in the past with younger players and kind of like how they were and how they played the game, I think that Joe Girardi and Javi Baez, Wilson Contreras, younger players like that, I think that's a nightmare scenario. He may want to be the manager of the Cubs. I don't know who wouldn't. It's kind of a dream scenario. You have all of these young players, and then you have these experienced pitchers to kind of even it out in a way. You already have the World Series experience. Of course, he's waiting for the job to open up, but I don't think that's to say that Theo is going to offer him the job. I think that it really doesn't make a lot of sense. I need to look more into it, but I'm not paying much attention into it right now.
I'm not either. But like you said, if there's one thing about Joe Maddon's game and what he brings to a team, it's that looseness, right? I mean, he emphasizes that, all right, guys, be yourself, have fun, do it the right thing. And that speaks a lot of volume to the type of guy who he is, and he puts a lot of trust into his players. Like, he only has 2 team meetings, one at the beginning of the season, actually 3, beginning of the season, midway through, and right before October. So Joe Maddon doesn't really like a lot of team meetings. He lets, the water just flow. And I think that's a huge part of Joe Maddon's game and why the players are so who they are with the Cubs, because they're so loose, they're having fun, that swagger mentality. But he will call you out if you mess up. Just like in 2018, this past season, when Wilson Contreras didn't hustle out that double. Called him out, talked to him, everything resolved. So I think Joe Maddon is a perfect fit for this team, and I'm not too buying too much in the Joe Girardi rumors. Now, we tweeted asking our followers if they had any questions. So I picked a few, and Mark and I are going to ask them. So the first one comes from Baconator101T, which, nice name, by the way. He asked, should Pedro Strop become the Cubs closer this year? And I looked into it, and I thought about it, and I say, why not? He fulfilled that role when Morrow went down last year, and up until he hurt his hamstring, super consistent, shows emotion, throws gas. I'm in, but I'm also not counting Morrow out. So where do you stand on that?
Just like you said, I mean, Morrow is still under contract. What, 3 years? They have him for 3 years, so 2 more seasons. At least 2 more seasons. But they have Morrow. If he's healthy, then Morrow is going to be that guy. And when he was healthy, he was a great closer. He did the job. He just got injured. I think that Strop can be the closer and, put him in there when Morrow isn't able to go. But for the most part, keep Strop as that 7th, 8th inning setup guy. But if you need him to be the closer, yeah, he can get that job done. No problem at all.
100%. All right, now next question comes from J. Lou D 412. Thanks for tweeting in. He said, can the Cubs win with the roster they have right now? No big offseason move, just a healthy team and developing players. Well, I say absolutely. This team, they won 95 games last year with their MVP Chris Bryant missing 70 games. Contreras ice cold at the plate. Yu Darvish with 1 in. So much bad happened for the Cubs last year and so much good happened for the Brewers that was the best Brewers team in franchise history. And it's hard for me to say that they'll, replicate it. Obviously, I doubt you will see Yelich consistently be that good again because his last 2 months worth of numbers, they were ridiculous. It's unheard of. So for me, I mean, there was so much bad that happened in the Cubs to be in the position they were and so much good for the Brewers to be. And the series, the regular season went to 163. The Cubs won 95 games. It's so much bad, like I keep on saying it happened, but it did. So I think the Cubs do have a winning team right now. I just think that a big offseason acquisition never hurts and kind of puts you out in front preseason-wise. But just like Theo said, talent doesn't mean production.
I mean, yeah, you said it all right there. I think that this team, most of the team, the offensive-wise at least, they are from the 2016 team, they're here, and there's no reason to think that should have been their peak. You saw a lot of players. Rizzo, he heated up the second half, but his first half was pretty dreadful. Bryant was injured the whole season, but it seemed like the whole season he was never able to keep going. Yu Darvish, you already know. And they still won 95 games. Which is really impressive. So there's no reason to think that this team can't do it if they're healthy. But of course, I think that signing a Bryce Harper or the villain, Manny Machado, signing one of those guys, I think that will take this team over the edge and be like, oh, we're not messing around anymore. We're not here for that. We're winning 100 games, and we're going to win the division. We're taking it back from the Brewers.
Absolutely, 100%. Now, at Chi-Town Sports 44, they tweeted in to us and asked Bryce Krispies or Briss Barper, which I don't know about the second one. I don't know how corny that one sounds, but Bryce Krispies, I mean, come on. You got to go with Bryce Krispies, right? Bryant, Harper.
I mean, Bryce Krispies is absolutely hysterical. When I saw that, I was laughing. I was laughing out loud for like at least 2 minutes. I think that is amazing. That needs to be on a cereal box somewhere. I would definitely get some Bryce Krispies.
That, and we might have to make it into a t-shirt. Who knows? But one last quick question before we wrap things up here. We know how good Rizzo is for the Cubs. He's their captain. He puts up consistently good numbers, and he's kind of embraced that role of the team leader. Now, I got to ask you this, Mark. Will Rizzo ever win an MVP, or do you think he has the ability to with all the good young talent coming into the game today?
I don't think he'll ever win an MVP, and I think it's simply because you see what happened this year. You see someone like Christian Yelich, who really, he's never been an MVP candidate. He just came out of nowhere, and he really turned it on. You see all these players. I mean, there is so much young talent that keeps on being brought up and they keep on developing, and it's not even saying that Rizzo is going to get worse because he stayed as one of the more consistent players in baseball. I think that this is just who Rizzo is. He's going to hit around 30 home runs. He's going to bring in 109 RBIs. He's going to hit about 290. That's what he's going to do. But there's going to be someone that has a freakish year and hits 50 home runs and they win it. When it comes to career numbers, yeah, Rizzo is going to be the better player, but I don't think that he will ever win an MVP. He'll consistently be top 5, top 10 in the voting.
Yeah, and it's kind of sucky too because I mean, Rizzo's the type of guy who puts up great seasons, but there's just better players in the league. And it's not a bad thing. It's just, do you take that one good season or do you take a consistently good player? And I think you got to go consistently good player. And I'm 100% agreeing with you, Mark. I mean, I don't think he will ever win one. He has the potential to, but he has to break through in a big way. And who knows if he ever does, but we know what we're getting out of Rizzo when he comes into a season, right? I mean, like you said, 30 homers, 100 RBIs, 270, 290, somewhere around there, which you take that any day. And especially when he's a leader for the Cubs, that goes a long way too. Absolutely. So, all right, guys. Well, that just about does it for the Cubs Live podcast. I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm Kyle. He's Mark. Thank you guys for tuning in, following along at Cubs Live. I know it's the off season. The off season is a long thing, but Cubs Live, well, we're here to, put out content every single day. 2018, 2019, everything's going to go a long ways. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for following along. I'm Kyle. He's Mark. Go Cubs.